At 6:45 a.m. Tuesday morning, Marcus stood in his kitchen drinking coffee and watching the road through his window. At exactly 7 o'clock, Karen's BMW crept up the driveway like she was approaching a crime scene. She stepped out wearing what appeared to be a brand new outfit from the rural cosplay section of some upscale department store designer: work boots that had never seen dirt, cargo pants with creases sharp enough to cut glass, and a pearl-buttoned work shirt that probably cost more than most people's weekly grocery budget. Marcus met her at the truck, where his crew was already loading equipment. Tommy Reeves and Jake Morissant, of the best electricians in the county, barely glanced up from securing wire spools. "Morning, Karen. Ready to work," she surveyed. The organized chaos of tools, extension cords, and electrical panels with barely concealed horror. "Where exactly will I be helping?" "Everywhere." "Tommy, Jake, meet Karen. She's our new apprentice." Tommy, a grizzled veteran with arms like tree trunks, looked Karen up and down and grinned. "Well, I'll be damned. Marcus told us we were getting help, but he didn't mention she was management material." "Former management," Marcus corrected. "Today, she's labor." The community center sat on 5 acres of manicured lawn, a sprawling building that had once been the neighborhood's crown jewel, before years of deferred maintenance left it looking tired and forgotten. The electrical problems were immediately obvious: flickering lights, outlets that sparked when plugged in, and a main panel that belonged in a museum. "Jesus," Jake whistled, examining the panel. "This thing's from the Carter administration. How'd it pass inspection this long?" "It didn't," Marcus said. "That's why we're here." He handed Karen a pair of work gloves. "First lesson safety equipment. Isn't optional. Hard hat, gloves, safety glasses. You don't wear them, you don't work." Karen struggled with the hard hat, her perfectly styled hair refusing to cooperate. "This is going to ruin my your what your hair appointment," Tommy snorted. "Lady, we're about to tear apart a building's electrical system in 100-degree heat. Your hair is the least of your problems." Marcus led them inside, where the scope of work became clear. The building's electrical system was a patchwork of additions and modifications spanning for decades. Code violations were layered like geological. Straight each renovation had added new problems while solving none of the old ones. "We're starting with the main panel," Marcus announced. "Karen, you're going to help Tommy run new feeder cables from the utility connection." "Run cables? It means you carry one end while he pulls the other. Think you can handle that?" The morning sun was already brutal, and they'd barely started when Karen began wilting. Running to 100 MP service cable meant crawling through tight spaces, wrestling with 250 pounds of copper wire, and working in areas where the temperature hit 110 degrees. "I need a break," Karen gasped after 30 minutes. "Break time's at 10, Tommy called from inside a ceiling cavity. "We got 300 feet of cable to pull before then. But it's so hot, ... Welcome to construction," Jake said, not unkindly. "This is what work looks like." By lunch, Karen's designer outfit was soaked with sweat. Her manicure was destroyed, and she'd accumulated enough dirt to plant a garden. She sat in the air-conditioned truck while the crew shared sandwiches and cold drinks. "How do you do this?" "Every day," she asked Marcus. "Same way anyone does hard work. You show up and do it, but the heat, the physical strain." "Funny thing about manual labor," Marcus said, "your body adapts your mind to. After a while, you start taking pride in building something with your hands." Karen stared at the community center, seeing it differently now that she understood the complexity hidden behind every wall. "I never realized how much work goes into ... everything. Most people don't. They flip a switch and expect lights to come on, turn a faucet and expect water. But somebody had to install every wire, every pipe, every piece of infrastructure that makes modern life possible." "Is that why you became a contractor?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. "My dad was an electrician, worked construction his whole life, came home exhausted every night, hands torn up, back aching. I swore I'd never do the same thing. But you did?" "Yeah. Turns out there's something about building things that gets in your blood. First time I wired a house and saw a family turn on their lights for the first time, I was hooked. The afternoon brought new challenges. The original electrical plan was wrong, walls weren't where the blueprints indicated, and structural modifications over the years had created obstacles nobody anticipated. They had to reroute circuits, drill new holes, and completely redesign the lighting layout. Karen struggled with every task, but something had changed. She stopped complaining about the heat. When Tommy asked her to hold a flashlight, she positioned it without being told where to aim. When Jake needed wire stripped, she figured out how to use the strippers without cutting herself. By Wednesday, she was arriving early, bringing coffee for the crew. Her designer work clothes had been replaced by actual work, gear still new, but functional. Her hands were developing calluses. "You're getting the hang of this," Marcus told her, as she successfully installed her first outlet. "It's oddly satisfying," Karen admitted, "knowing that when someone plugs something in here, it'll work because I helped make it happen." Thursday brought crisis. The city inspector arrived unexpectedly and found problems that threatened to shut down the entire project. "This panel configuration doesn't meet current arc fault requirements," Inspector Rodriguez announced. "You'll need to install AFCI breakers throughout, which means rewiring half the circuits." Marcus ran the numbers in his head. Additional materials, extra labor, another day of work. They were already cutting it close to meet Saturday's deadline. "How much is this going to cost?" Karen asked quietly. "Another $1,500, minimum. Plus we might not finish in time." Karen closed her eyes. The HOA's remaining balance wouldn't cover additional costs. "Do it, Karen, do it." "I'll find the money somewhere." Marcus studied her face, seeing something new there. Not the desperate calculation of earlier in the week, but genuine commitment to seeing the job done right. "Tell you what," he said, "Karen's been working her ass off all week, learning the trade, pulling her weight. I think that earns her a discount." Tommy and Jake exchanged glances. They'd watched Karen transform from helpless city girl to competent helper, and both men had developed grudging respect for her determination. "No additional charge for the AFCI work," Marcus announced. "Karen's sweat equity covers it." Friday was a marathon. 18-hour day, working by floodlight, racing against the clock to complete the final connections. Karen's hands were blistered, her back ached, and she'd consumed more coffee than should be humanly possible. But when the last circuit was connected and Marcus threw the main breaker, every light in the building blazed to life. The crew cheered. Karen actually cried. "We did it," she whispered. "We actually did it." Saturday morning brought the final inspection. Inspector Rodriguez walked through methodically, checking every connection, testing every outlet, verifying every code requirement. "Outstanding work," he declared, signing off on the permit. This is how electrical systems should be installed. The community center looked transformed. New LED lighting made everything bright and welcoming. The sound system worked perfectly. The kitchen equipment hummed efficiently. Everything was ready for the grand reopening. As the crew packed up their tools, Karen approached Marcus. "I owe you an apology." "For what?" "For the fine. For treating you and your neighbors like problems to be solved instead of people to be respected. I was so focused on property values and regulations that I forgot we're supposed to be a community." Marcus nodded. Apology accepted. "But you don't owe it just to me." "I know. I've got a lot of people to make things right with." That evening, as neighbors began arriving for the reopening celebration, Karen found Marcus by the entrance. "There's something else," she said. "The HOA board met this morning. We're rescinding all the fines from the rural properties. Dave keeps his fire pit, Sarah keeps her garden, and you keep your stock tank, just like that. Just like that. And we're modifying the covenants to exempt agricultural and rural use properties from recreational facility restrictions. It should have been that way from the start." The celebration was everything Karen had hoped for. The mayor praised the community's dedication. Neighbors who hadn't spoken in years were laughing together. The building glowed with warm light, and every electrical system worked flawlessly. As the evening wound down, up, still wearing her work clothes instead of the cocktail dress she'd originally planned. "Good turnout," he said. "Better than I expected. Turns out when you actually listen to people, instead of just giving them orders, they're more willing." To support community activities, Marcus watched her stack chairs with the easy efficiency she'd learned during the week. "So what's next for the HOA?" Karen smiled, the first genuine smile he'd seen from her. "We're hiring a part-time handyman. Someone to handle basic maintenance, small repairs, keep the building in good shape." I know a guy who might be interested if the pay's right. Oh yeah, what's the job pay? $700 a month. Setup included. Marcus laughed a real laugh this time, free of anger or irony. You know what, Karen Whitmore arrived at Marcus's ranch the next morning in her pristine white BMW, navigating the gravel driveway like she was crossing a minefield. Marcus watched from his porch as she stepped out in designer heels completely unsuited for rural terrain, clutching a leather portfolio against her chest like armor. She'd traded her usual power suit for what she probably considered ranch-appropriate. A tire-pressed khakis and a polo shirt that still had creases from the plantage. Everything about her screamed city transplant, trying to blend in and failing. Spectacularly, Mr. Rivera. Her voice carried that same saccharine tone from their phone conversation, but Marcus caught the tremor underneath. Thank you for agreeing to meet. He didn't move from his position on the porch steps, forcing her to come to him, Karen, right on time. She picked her way across the yard, wincing as her heels sank into the soft earth. I have to say, your property is quite rustic. It's a working ranch. Marcus stood slowly, enjoying the way she had to crane her neck to meet his eyes. At 6'3", with shoulders built by decades of physical labor, he cut an imposing figure. You wanted to discuss the community center job? Yes. Well, ... She glanced around nervously, taking in the cattle, the barn, and yes, the notorious stock tank. Perhaps we could speak inside, somewhere more private. This is plenty private. What's on your mind? Karen's composure cracked slightly. Mr. Rivera, I'll be frank. The community center reopening is extremely important to our neighborhood. It represents everything we've worked to build here: a sense of community, elevated property values, a better quality of life, and you need it done by Saturday. Yes, the word came out like a sigh. The mayor will be attending, along with several city council members and the entire HOA board. We've invited over 300 residents. The catering is arranged, the decorations are ordered, the band is booked, ... But you have no electricity. Karen's jaw tightened. A temporary setback. The previous contractor had an unexpected emergency. Marcus pulled out his phone and showed her the weather forecast. Looks like we're in for a heat wave this week. Highs near 105. That's going to make the work harder, more dangerous. My crew will need frequent breaks, extra hydration, hazard pay. Your crew? Did you think I was doing this alone? A full electrical upgrade on a 5,000 square foot facility. We're talking about replacing the main panel, running new circuits, upgrading the lighting system, installing proper GFCI protection, bringing everything up to current code. Marcus counted off on his fingers. That's a minimum 3-man crew working 12-hour days. Karen opened her portfolio and pulled out a folder. I've done some research on electrical contractors in the area. The average rate for this type of work is lady. There's nothing average about this situation. Marcus's voice hardened. You're not hiring a contractor for routine work. You're hiring a miracle worker to save your ass. Her face flushed red. There's no need for crude language. No, then let me put it professionally. Marcus pulled out his own folder, detailed estimate he'd spent hours preparing. Emergency electrical upgrade, rush job, weekend work, extreme heat conditions. My quote is $7,000, and that's a bargain. Karen's eyes widened as she scanned the document. This is itemized down to the penny. I've been in this business for 20 years. I know what things cost. Marcus tapped the paper. Labor, materials, permits, inspection fees, hazard pay, equipment rental. You want it done right, and you want it done fast. That's the price. But this is more than triple what I expected to pay. Then you should have expected reality. Marcus leaned back against his porch railing. See, Karen, you made a fundamental error. You assumed you had options. Her knuckles went white as she gripped the estimate. What do you mean? I mean, there are exactly 3 licensed electrical contractors in this county capable of handling a job this size on short notice. Jimmy Kowalski's crew is down for the weak food poisoning, like you heard. Rick Yamamoto is booked solid until next month. That leaves me. Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. There have to be others. Contractors from Austin, maybe, or sure, call around. But every hour you waste shopping for a better deal is another hour. My schedule fills up. I've got 3 other projects lined up this week. If you want me to bump them for your emergency, you pay emergency rates. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the distant lowing of cattle and the buzz of insects in the afternoon heat. Marcus could practically see the gears turning in Karen's head as she calculated the cost of failure. "This is extortion," she said finally. Marcus laughed a sound with no humor in it. "Is it? Let me tell you what extortion looks like. Extortion is fining someone $700 for using their own stock tank. Extortion is targeting rural property owners with bogus violations to force them off their land. Extortion is changing HOA rules without proper notice and then retroactively enforcing them." Each word hit Karen like a physical blow. She actually took a step backward. "What I'm offering," Marcus continued, "is a fair price for emergency services. Take it or leave it." Karen's phone rang and she answered it with shaking hands. "Hello? Yes, this is Karen, ... What? No, that's impossible. When did you find out?" Her face went pale. "All right, I understand. Thank you for letting me know." She hung up and stared at Marcus with something approaching desperation. That was the city inspector. "He's requiring a full electrical certification before we can get an occupancy permit. For the event, without that permit, no event," Marcus finished. "No grand reopening. No photo ops with the mayor. Just a lot of very disappointed neighbors wondering why their HOA president couldn't organize a simple community gathering." "You're enjoying this," Karen accused. "Should I not be? Yesterday you were threatening to fine me into poverty over a cattle watering tank. Today you're begging me to save your political career. Yeah, I'm enjoying it a little." Karen closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, Marcus saw something he hadn't expected: genuine fear. "Mr. Rivera, you don't understand. This event isn't just about me. The HOA has been struggling financially. We took out a loan to renovate the community center, banking on increased membership and event bookings to pay it back. If this reopening fails, if we can't demonstrate community support, you'll go bankrupt," Marcus realized, "and all those fines you've been levying. That's not about property values. That's about keeping the lights on." Karen's silence was answer enough. Marcus studied her for a long moment, seeing her clearly for the first time, not the petty tyrant he'd imagined, but a desperate woman trying to hold together a crumbling organization through sheer force of will and increasingly desperate measures. "How much does the HOA owe?" he asked. $43,000, she whispered. "The loan payments are due monthly, and we're already behind if we miss another payment, ... They'll foreclose on the community center and dissolve the HOA. The city will take over maintenance of common areas, which means special assessments for everyone. Some of these families, they can't afford that kind of hit." Marcus felt his anger cooling, replaced by something more complex. Karen was still a pain in the ass, but she wasn't the cartoon villain he'd painted her as. She was just another person trying to solve an impossible problem with the wrong tools. But that didn't change the math. $7,000, he said firmly. "That's my price. You want to save your community center, you pay what it costs." Karen opened her portfolio again and pulled out a checkbook. Her hand trembled slightly as she wrote, and Marcus noticed the account balance written in the register, $8,247. She was spending nearly every dollar the HOA had in reserve. "There," she said, tearing out the check and handing it to him, $7,000. "When can you start?" Marcus looked at the check, then at Karen's face, then at the stock tank visible through the pasture. An idea began forming in his mind, something that would solve both their problems. While delivering a lesson Karen would never forget. "I can start tomorrow morning, but I have one condition." "What condition?" Marcus smiled, and this time there was genuine warmth in it. "You're going to help, I beg your pardon? Part of my setup fee includes labor. You want to save money on this job, you're going to work for it. Every day until Saturday, you're going to be here at 7 a.m. sharp, ready to haul cable, hold flashlights, and do whatever grunt work I need done." Karen looked horrified. "I can't possibly have meetings, responsibilities, then hire someone else." Marcus started to hand the check back. "Wait," Karen snatched it away. "Fine, I'll single quotes LL ... I'll rearrange my schedule." "Good, and Karen, wear work clothes, real ones, because if you show up in designer khakis again, I'm sending you home." As Karen picked her way back across the yard to her BMW, Marcus called out, "Oh, and one more thing. That fine you sent me, consider it paid in full, setup included. Karen froze with her hand on the car door handle. What do you mean? I mean, you just paid me $7,000 to do electrical work. I'm deducting $700 of that as compensation for your harassment. The rest covers my actual costs and a very reasonable profit margin. You can't do that. Watch me, Marcus held up his phone. I'm texting my lawyer right now to document our agreement. $7,000. For electrical services with a $700 CO. The certified letter trembled in Marcus Rivera's weathered hands as he read the impossible words, $700 fine for unauthorized swimming activities. Swimming. On his own 47-acre ranch that he'd owned for 15 years, the HOA president's signature mocked him from the bottom of the page. But what Karen Whitmore didn't know was that Marcus wasn't just any rancher. He was a former commercial contractor who knew exactly how much her precious community center's electrical work was worth. And in 72 hours, when her contractor failed to show up for the biggest event of the year, she'd be begging him to save her reputation. The price, $7,000. Setup included, Marcus Rivera stood on his wraparound porch, watching the morning sun paint golden streaks across his cattle pastures when the certified mail truck rumbled up his gravel driveway. The driver, a kid barely out of high school, looked apologetic as he handed over the thick envelope. Sorry, Mr. Rivera. Looks official. Marcus signed with a grunt, his calloused fingers already dreading whatever bureaucratic nightmare awaited. Inside, the return address made his stomach drop. Willowbrook Estates Homeowners Association. He tore it open right there, standing in his work boots and dirt-stained jeans, and felt the world tilt sideways. Notice of violation and fine property owner Marcus Rivera. Violation, unauthorized recreational swimming activities, fine amount, $700 payment due, 30 days from receipt swimming. The word came out as a strangled laugh. He read it again, then a third time, hoping the letters would rearrange themselves into something that made sense. The attached documentation included 3 photographs: his old stock tank, the one he'd used for 15 years to water his cattle. In the summer heat, when the work got brutal, he'd sometimes hop in to cool off. It was barely 4 feet deep and 8 feet across. Calling it a pool was like calling a puddle an ocean. His phone buzzed. A text from his neighbor, Dave Kellerman. Did you get the letter to, they fined me $500 for my fire pit? Says it's an unauthorized recreational structure. This is insane. Marcus's jaw tightened. Dave's fire pit was a simple metal ring where he burned brush. Both men lived on large acreage outside the main subdivision. Properties that had been grandfathered in when Willowbrook Estates expanded 5 years ago. They'd been assured their rural lifestyle wouldn't be affected. Another text appeared. This one from Sarah Chen, who lived a quarter-mile east. $650 fine for my vegetable garden. Apparently, it's agricultural activity in a residential zone. I'm calling a lawyer. Marcus dialed the HOA office, his free hand gripping the porch railing hard enough to leave fingerprints in the wood. Willowbrook Estates HOA. This is Karen, speaking. Karen Whitmore. He knew that voice saccharine sweet with an edge of steel. She'd been elected HOA president 3 years ago on a platform of preserving property values, and had been a thorn in everyone's side ever since. This is Marcus Rivera. I just received a fine that makes no sense. $700 for swimming in my stock tank. Mr. Rivera, I'm so glad you called. Her tone suggested she was anything but glad. The board has been discussing your property for months. That tank of yours has become quite the eyesore, and several neighbors have complained about the noise and disruption when you use it for recreational purposes. Recreational purposes. It's for watering cattle. I've been using it that way for 15 years, long before your HOA existed. I understand your confusion, but times change. The community has standards now. If you want to maintain a swimming facility, you'll need to submit plans for approval, install proper safety equipment, and pay the appropriate fees. Until then, the fine stands. Marcus felt heat rising in his chest. Karen, that's not a swimming pool. It's agricultural equipment. The photographs clearly show recreational use. Mr. Rivera, I have witnesses who've seen you. Frolicking in there on multiple occasions. Frolicking. The word came out like a curse. I was cooling off after working in 100-degree heat. Regardless of your motivation, The activity violates our recreational facility guidelines. The fine is quite reasonable, actually. We could have issued a cease and desist order requiring immediate removal." Marcus closed his eyes, picturing Karen in her pristine office, probably examining her manicure while she destroyed his neighbor's. Lives. "And what exactly gives you the authority to fine me for using my own property?" "The covenant modifications passed last year, which all property owners agreed to by default unless they formally objected. Since you failed to attend the meetings or submit written objections, you're bound by the new regulations." "What meetings?" "I never received any notices. We mailed notifications to all property owners. If you didn't receive yours, I suggest updating your mailing address with the Postal Service." Marcus lived at the same address for 15 years. His mailbox sat at the end of his driveway with his name clearly marked. But arguing with Karen was like reasoning with a brick wall. If brick walls could charge you for the privilege. "Fine," he said, "though nothing about this was fine. I'll pay your ridiculous fee. But I want copies of all the documentation justifying this." Of course, though I should mention, paying the fine doesn't resolve the underlying violation. You'll still need to cease the unauthorized activities. The line went dead. Marcus stared. At his phone, then at the letter, then at his stock tank sitting innocently in the pasture. His prize Angus bull, Brutus, stood beside it, probably wondering why his water source had suddenly become the center of a legal battle. His phone rang. Dave Kellerman's name appeared on the screen. "Marcus, this is war. Karen's gone too far this time."
"What do you mean?"
"I just got off the phone with my lawyer. Turns out, Karen's been systematically targeting anyone who doesn't. Kiss her ass. She's trying to force us off our land by making it too expensive to live here." Marcus walked inside, poured himself a whiskey despite the early hour, and sat down at his kitchen table. The fine notice lay spread before him like a battle plan. So what do? We fight back. But here's the thing: Karen's got the community center's grand reopening next weekend. Been planning it for months. It's supposed to be her crowning achievement, prove she's not just some petty dictator. What's that got to do with us? Everything. See, I know the contractor who was supposed to handle the electrical work for the event, Jimmy Kowalski. He just called me in a panic. His whole crew came down with food poisoning from some sketchy taco truck. They can't work for at least a week. Marcus felt a slow smile spreading across his face. Before he'd bought the ranch, he'd spent 20 years as a commercial electrical contractor. He knew every code, every requirement, every trick in the book. More importantly, he knew exactly what that kind of emergency work was worth. "Dave, you beautiful bastard. What's Karen's number?" "Hold on, there's more. The community center's been having problems with the main electrical panel. The city inspector red-tagged it last month. Without proper electrical work, they can't hold. Any events? Karen's been telling everyone this reopening will cement her legacy." Marcus's whiskey suddenly tasted like victory. He'd been planning to pay Karen's ridiculous fine and move on with his life. But if she wanted to play games, he'd show her what happened when you picked a fight with someone who actually knew how to finish one. The community center project would require a full electrical upgrade, emergency permits, and round-the-clock work to meet the deadline. In contractor terms, that meant premium rates, hazard pay, and enough leverage to make Karen Whitmore's life very, very interesting. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Mr. Rivera, this is Karen Whitmore. I've been told you might be able to help with an electrical emergency at our community center. Could we meet to discuss terms?" Marcus stared at the message, then at the fine notice, then back at the message. In the span of 3 hours, he'd gone from victim to solution provider. The irony was so perfect, it felt scripted. He finished his whiskey and typed back, "My emergency rate is $7,000, setup included. Take it or leave it." The response came back within seconds. "That's outrageous. My regular contractor only charges $2,000 for similar work." "Then call your regular contractor," Marcus replied. "Oh wait, you can't." His phone stayed silent for exactly 17 minutes. Long enough for Karen to realize she had no other options. Long enough for her to understand that sometimes the person you're trying to crush is the only one who can save you. When the response finally came, it was a single word: fine. Marcus Rivera smiled, picked up his pen, and began drafting the most expensive electrical estimate of his career. Karen Whitmore wanted to play power games. He was about to show her what real power looked